Okay, so you've heard about Profit First, but have you been putting off actually doing it? Well, today's episode might be the final push you need to actually get started. The reason Profit First works has nothing to do with math. It works because it leverages how humans actually behave, especially under stress. Thanks for joining me today, friend. If you're ready to master your money and your cash flow in your firm, you are in exactly the right place. Today, we're talking about behavioral psychology and how it relates to cash flow and profit first. Well, what is behavioral psychology? That's the weird things, the weird ways that our brain works, like mental accounting, which we'll get into. And these weird things, these weird phenomena, are what makes Profit First work exceptionally well. I'm also hoping that today this might be the push that you need, that you've been needing to finally get started. Maybe you haven't actually done Profit First yet. You've been familiar with it. You know you probably should do it, but you've been just putting it off. It's because you don't quite understand it, or maybe you don't quite understand why you actually need it. Well, hopefully today is going to answer that question for you. Profit First harnesses your existing psychological wiring to make cash flow easier and to basically trick your brain into making better decisions. Better decisions that can actually make you more money. Money that you could be bringing home to your family. You may have been resisting because, we all resist change. But when you actually put it into practice, you might find that everything gets easier. So, let's talk about the real reasons that Profit First works and why it has nothing to do with accounting or math at all. Okay, so I'm going to give you six psychological phenomena or biases, perhaps, that impact our behavior and are the reasons why Profit First works really well. Okay, so the first one is called Parkinson's Law. And Mike Michalowicz talks about Parkinson's Law in his book, Profit First, which you should definitely check out. Basically, Parkinson's Law is the idea that our expenses expand to match our available income or available cash. Now, this actually comes from a guy named Cyril Northcote Parkinson, who was a British historian, and he introduced it in the 1950s in an essay that he wrote for The Economist. Later, he actually wrote a whole book on the topic. So, what Cyril was doing is that he was observing government bureaucracies and large institutions. And he noticed that these bureaucracies tended to grow even though the workload didn't. Staff created work for each other, and efficiency declined as resources increased. I think we're pretty familiar with this in government. Government isn't known for being particularly efficient, right? Well, the rule is this, and the rule he discovered is this. It's that if money is available, it gets spent. And this happens in governments, it happens in big businesses all over the world. You in your department, you have a budget, and if there's some money left over in that budget at the end of the year, you're going to spend it, because if you don't spend it, yeah, the leadership is going to see that you maybe don't need quite as much money as they allocated to you. So Parkinson's law is that rule. It's the rule that our expenses expand to fill the void. If money's available, it gets spent. This explains why people spend raises quickly, businesses burn through increased revenue, and budgets get used up simply because they exist. Have you ever noticed that in your own life, right? When you get a raise or you get extra money, you tend to use it really fast. There's a similar concept in dieting. You might know this, but my husband is a physician associate, and in working with his patients, I always call them clients, but he calls them patients. Many of them are trying to lose weight. And one of the first things he recommends to them is using smaller plates. Only in America do we use the biggest plates ever, and we pile them high full of food, right? And I don't know about you, but my mother taught me to clean my plate, and you better eat everything on it. Because after all, there's starving children in some country across the world, right? And I think a lot of us were taught that too. And so, when we have a big plate, we fill it up and we're going to tend to eat everything on it. So a very simple way that you can force yourself to eat less and not even realize it, basically trick yourself into eating less, is to use smaller plates. And this is basically what Profit First does. By having your money flow into sub accounts, one for profit, one for taxes, one for owner's comp, one for operating expenses, you're taking a big large number, which is your big bank account balance number, and you're breaking it into smaller pieces. And so it seems like there's less money than there actually is. It's smaller plates applied to finance. There's a related phenomenon that we observe in the markets, and it's called the wealth effect. The wealth effect is a very confirmed and observable phenomenon that when the stock market goes up, people tend to spend more, even though they don't actually have more disposable income. It's because they feel wealthier. And the opposite is true as well. When the markets go down, people feel poorer, and so they tend to spend less. And so, one of the tricks in life is to make yourself feel poorer than you actually are. Yes. That is one way to help yourself spend less. So, by removing profit first, you are artificially constraining your spending. You're making yourself feel like you have less money. And I've often said this to clients, right? If you have one account that has $50,000 in it, you will feel a lot more wealthy than if you have 5 accounts with $10,000 in them each. It's just a very simple way of tricking your brain. When we don't have these tricks, when we don't have these constraints, we tend to overhire. We tend to spend too much on software. We tend to justify inefficiencies. We tend to justify overspending as I'm reinvesting in my firm. Well, when we have constraints, we force ourselves to adapt. And so Parkinson's law is simply that, giving us smaller plates. Okay, the second phenomenon is mental accounting. I mentioned this in the intro, and this might not sound very cool, but I'm going to tell you it's pretty cool. Mental accounting is the tendency for people to treat money differently based on labels or where they got it from. We tend to categorize, label, and treat money differently depending on where it comes from, what it's labeled for, or how it is mentally assigned. And this comes from a behavioral economist named Richard Thaler. You may have heard of him. He's a Nobel Prize winner, won the Nobel Prize in 2017. He wrote a book called Nudge. Maybe you're familiar with that one. Basically, his work, he showed that people create mental buckets for money and apply different rules to each bucket. And, in doing this, he was basically trying to prove that people don't behave rationally when it comes to their money. We actually behave irrationally. And mental accounting is one way that we behave quite irrationally because $1 over here is the same as $1 over there. But depending on where we got it from, we're going to treat it very differently. Here's an example. Found money versus earned money. We tend to treat found money a lot differently than we treat earned money. If you find some money on the street or you win some money in a lottery winning or whatever, right? Or you get a random check in the mail that you weren't expecting, we're more likely to gamble, spend freely, or splurge with found money than we are with earned money. And so Profit First basically leverages or harnesses this tendency that we have for our greater good. We're less likely to touch the money that's in the tax account because it's labeled tax. It's not supposed to be used for operating expenses. We're a lot less likely to invade the profit account to pay for operating expenses because it's there and it's labeled profit. So that is mental accounting. The third phenomena is loss aversion. Loss aversion is the idea that we hate losing more than we love winning. Okay, so you might have to wrap your brain around this one a little bit, but behavioral economists have shown this in study after study, and actually we talked about this in the last book that we read, A Random Walk Down Wall Street. In the world of investing, it's an observable and confirmed phenomenon that losses hurt about twice as much as gains feel good. Okay, now I know that's a mouthful, so let me explain. The intensity of feeling is greater for a loss of the same magnitude than a gain of the same magnitude. So if you were to lose $100, the intensity of that feeling is far greater than if you were to gain $100. We'd much prefer to not lose than to gain. Not losing feels a lot better. And loss aversion shows up in profit first. Because once your profits, taxes, etc. are set aside, spending it feels like a loss. And so your profits become emotionally protected. You don't want to spend from the profit account because I'm losing that profit, right? Much easier to spend from the operating expenses account. The fourth behavioral psychological phenomenon that we see is decision fatigue reduction. This one is fascinating. You know, decision fatigue is a real thing, and you may be familiar with it. We can only make so many decisions in a day. This has been proven. And then the quality of our decisions starts to go down. This was discovered by a guy named Roy Baumeister. He was doing research on self-control. He did a study in which he found that parole judges were significantly more likely to grant parole early in the day. So, if you ever faced with parole, you want your hearing to be early in the day. As the day went on, the approval rates steadily dropped. Only after food breaks did the approval rates actually go up. Why is this? Because as time wore on, mental energy was depleted. As these judges had to hear more and more cases and make more and more decisions, their mental energy was actually depleted. Baumeister also found that decision-making draws from the same limited pool of mental energy as self-control. Get that. So, too many decisions, less self-control. Same thing with money, right? Too many financial decisions, less financial self-control. Profit first reduces the need to make decisions by pre-allocating money and simplifying financial decisions, and therefore, hopefully, improving financial self-control in a roundabout way. Fascinating stuff. Okay. Number five. Number five is the immediate feedback loop. And this is a no-brainer, right? We know this. You know this. Your brain responds better to short-term feedback than to long, abstract goals. We all struggle with delayed gratification. You know, in the profit first system, you get to see your profit now, not at the end of the year. That's what makes it so powerful. It's there. You have that immediate feedback loop, that immediate gratification. Traditional profit and losses are backwards looking and can feel punishing, right? At the end of the year, or at the end of the quarter or whatever, you get your profit and loss, and you didn't make it. You didn't get the profit that you wanted. You suck. Well, profit first, unlike that, reinforces behavior more quickly by getting your profit faster, by getting that feedback up front, and helps create momentum. Okay, so immediate feedback loops we've gone through. So just to recap here, Parkinson's law, mental accounting, loss aversion, decision fatigue reduction, immediate feedback loops, and finally, the last one is this. Constraint and scarcity drive creativity. So in the profit first system, you are creating constraints and scarcity for yourself. We kind of mentioned this a little bit in the first one, Parkinson's law. Constraints force prioritization. When you only have X amount of dollars, you have to prioritize where that money goes. You don't have unlimited resources. Now, when you have a credit card, it can be very easy to feel like you have unlimited resources. But by constraining yourself, by only looking at your OPEX account and only spending what's there, you are forcing yourself to prioritize. Instead of blowing tens of thousands of dollars on every marketing opportunity that comes your way, you are going to be forced to focus on those that have the highest ROI. And that is going to make you more profitable. There are so many law firms right now, maybe you're one of them, that are wasting money on low ROI activities. One of the beautiful things about Profit First is that it's going to force you to rethink all of those things. You're forced to find efficiencies when money isn't unlimited. And let's be real, money is always limited. But Profit First helps us realize that. And it also encourages us to pay attention to the numbers, to have an awareness of our spending. Scarcity forces us to make better decisions. So, my friend, those are all the reasons why Profit First is so effective. It has to do with tricking our brain. We are not purely logical creatures. Our brains do weird things. And Profit First is a beautiful system because it capitalizes on those weird things that our brains do. When you actually implement Profit First, and I'm not saying you have to do it or you have to do exactly the same system, you got to find the system that's right for you. But the basic idea is this: you need a structure for your cash flow. That's going to help you create clear cash boundaries, reduce your financial anxiety. You're not going to have those looming tax bills because you're going to have tax money in your tax account. You're going to have immediate visibility into your profit. It's going to help you improve your spending discipline, organize your finances, and most of all, smooth out volatile cash flow. That's the beauty of the percentages. When I first found Profit First and I saw the basic concept is allocating money into sub-accounts based on percentages instead of dollar amounts. Oh, wow. What a beautiful way to do it. So simple, but makes so much sense. Friend, if you've been dragging your feet on Profit First, but you know you need a better system, today's the day. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to take that first step. You don't have to do it exactly how the official system is, but start by setting up those sub-accounts for yourself. When you get clear about cash flow, everything changes. I've seen it with clients that we've worked with. There's some kind of weird magic to it. I don't know. All of a sudden, everything starts improving. But I strongly suspect it has a lot to do with the way our brains operate. Profit First works with the way that our brains are naturally wired. And profitability and cash flow is a big part of the work that we do here at the Lawyer Millionaire in helping law firm owners grow stronger businesses so that they can grow their personal wealth and achieve their lifelong dreams and goals. Because that's what it's all about, isn't it? So, my friend, let me ask you, when are you going to start prioritizing profit? When are you going to start taking home the money that you deserve, the money that you need to take home to take care of your family, to send your kids to college, to take your spouse on that dream vacation, to finally do that home renovation, or to finally get your retirement accounts growing? If you are ready to put a stake in the ground and get your financial house in order and make this the most profitable year yet, schedule an intro call with me and we'll show you the whole system. The link is in the show notes. And by the way, if you're not yet a part of the Lawyer Millionaire community, what are you waiting for? Join us to get access to a distinguished network of law firm owners, monthly masterclasses, free resources, and more. It's completely free. and the link is in the show notes. Well, that's it for today, friend. And remember, if your law firm isn't building you wealth, joy, and freedom, what the hell are you doing? Can I get an amen? I'll see you next time.